When Carl Jung reflected on the ways people reveal their true character, he realized that it is rarely in the moments we expect, or in the roles we consciously perform. People imagine that they show who they are through their words, their daily behaviors, or the achievements they display to the world. We judge ourselves and others by appearances, reputations, or by carefully crafted stories of what we have done. Yet Jung observed again and again that these are often nothing more than performances, layers of what he called the persona, a mask carefully shaped to meet the expectations of society, family, or profession. The persona is not inherently bad. In fact, it is necessary because we cannot walk through the world fully exposed, revealing our inner chaos or vulnerability to everyone we meet. But the persona, while protective, is a mask all the same. Beneath it lies another dimension, a set of impulses and truths that are far less controlled and far less flattering. Jung came to believe that the truest glimpses of a person's character are not seen in the roles they proudly claim, but in the unguarded moments where the mask slips, or when something inside them is projected outward. The first of these revelations happens through what Jung called shadow projection. The shadow is composed of those qualities within ourselves that we repress, deny, or exile from consciousness. It may contain selfishness, envy, cruelty, or vulnerability, anything our ego rejects because it does not align with the image we want to hold. Since the ego cannot tolerate owning these traits, it pushes them down into the unconscious. But the psyche has a way of expressing what is hidden, and so the shadow does not stay buried quietly. Instead, it is projected outward onto others, like a film cast on a screen. When a person judges another harshly, when they find themselves unreasonably irritated, disgusted, or even obsessed with someone else's flaws, often what they are truly seeing is their own disowned quality mirrored back at them. The second way character reveals itself, Jung believed, is when the persona itself is challenged or disrupted. As long as we can maintain the mask, we may appear calm, confident, or virtuous. But what happens when the mask is threatened, when someone calls us out, when we are criticized, when a carefully built reputation is questioned, or when life confronts us with failure? In those moments, the mask begins to crack. What emerges is not the polished image we work so hard to protect, but the raw material underneath, the impulses, defenses, and patterns that tell the truth about how we handle vulnerability and exposure. For Jung, these 2 points, projection of the shadow and breakdown of the persona, were the windows into character. Consider how different this view is from ordinary assumptions. Most people think character is shown in grand gestures, the medals we earn, the speeches we give, the kindness we display, when people are watching. But Jung saw that these things are often rehearsed, polished, and managed. True character shows up instead in those unguarded, unconscious expressions. Imagine a man who constantly accuses others of arrogance, who despises people for seeking attention. If we look closely, we might notice that what bothers him most is not arrogance itself, but his own repressed hunger for recognition. He cannot admit it, so he projects it outward, condemning others for the very desire he has exiled in himself. Or picture a woman who appears endlessly patient and agreeable, always maintaining her image of being supportive and kind. But when she is suddenly challenged in public, when someone exposes a flaw in her work, or questions her motives, the persona she has cultivated collapses. Instead of patience, we may see rage, sarcasm, or coldness. These eruptions, Jung argued, are not slips to be dismissed. They are the most truthful revelations of who we are, for they show the psyche unfiltered. This insight is unsettling because it suggests that what we think of as our best self is not the measure of our character at all. Instead, it is in our irritations, our judgments, and our moments of collapse that the truth emerges. Jung did not propose this to shame us, but to guide us toward greater awareness. If we pay attention to our projections, we can discover what we have hidden from ourselves. If we notice how we behave when our mask is stripped away, we can learn where we are fragile, where we have work to do to know oneself. Jung insisted one must turn not to the polished persona, but to the shadow, and the cracks in the mask. That is where authenticity lives. What makes this so powerful is how universal it is. Every person, no matter how disciplined, has a shadow. Every person wears a mask, and every person, at some point, will project their disowned qualities onto others, or be forced to face the collapse of their persona. These are not rare exceptions. They are built into the structure of the psyche. Jung's genius was in recognizing these moments as windows rather than accidents, opportunities to see what is otherwise hidden. And while most people instinctively look away from such discomfort, Jung encouraged leaning in. The irritation you feel towards someone else is not just about them. It is also a message about you. The defensiveness you experience when your mask is threatened is not just about protecting your image. It is also a revelation of what lies beneath it. Understanding this changes how we view both ourselves and others. Instead of taking every judgment at face value, we begin to ask, what is this revealing about the person doing the judging? Instead of being surprised when someone explodes under pressure, we begin to see that this is the very material that tells us who they are. And instead of hiding from our own slips, we begin to examine them as messages from the unconscious, signals pointing to the deeper self. This, then, is Jung's starting point. The truth of character is not revealed in the bright light of our conscious displays, but in the shadows we cast, and the cracks that appear when the mask cannot hold to see ourselves clearly. We must be willing to watch these moments closely, to study our judgments, and to notice what emerges when our image falters, for in those very moments lies the chance to move beyond illusion, and into authenticity. When Jung described the first way that character reveals itself, he turned to one of his most enduring insights: shadow projection. The shadow, as he conceived it, is not merely a collection of dark impulses like cruelty or aggression, though it includes these. It is any part of the self that is pushed out of consciousness, any quality that the ego cannot or will not accept. This means that the shadow can contain not only the negative, but also the positive strengths, creativity, or desires that do not fit the image a person has of themselves. The mechanism is simple, yet devastatingly powerful. Whatever we cannot admit about ourselves, we project outward. The world becomes a screen on which we cast the film of our inner life, and the people around us become unwitting actors in the drama of our unconscious. Jung saw this not as a rare phenomenon, but as one of the most constant and telling features of human behavior. Harsh judgment, obsessive dislike, or even exaggerated admiration can be the psyche's way of revealing what we cannot face within. Consider the case of David, who insists that his colleague Marcus is insincere, fake, and manipulative. His criticisms are not mild observations. They are charged with bitterness, repeated endlessly, and out of proportion to Marcus's actual flaws. If we apply Jung's lens, what we see is not simply Marcus's character, but David's. The venom of his judgment suggests that David himself harbors a tendency toward insincerity, a fear of his own manipulative impulses, or a hunger for approval that he despises. By projecting these rejected traits onto Marcus, David can keep them out of awareness, while still expressing the hostility they generate. In Jung's view, this is not incidental, it is diagnostic. By listening to what people condemn most fiercely in others, we hear the echo of their own shadow. Yet projection is not always negative. Jung also spoke of positive projections, moments when we elevate another person into an idealized figure, investing them with wisdom, beauty, or strength beyond what they truly possess. This, too, reveals the self, for what we admire most intensely often reflects qualities we have not yet owned in ourselves. The woman who adores a charismatic leader, believing he alone holds the answers to her questions, may in fact be projecting her own latent capacity for vision and strength onto him. To withdraw such projections is difficult, because it means accepting both the dark and the bright qualities as our own. But if we do not, we remain caught in illusions, mistaking the contents of our inner life for external reality. Projection, then, is one of the great psychological teachers, though it works through discomfort. Jung urged his patients to take their judgments seriously, not because they revealed truth about the other person, but because they pointed inward. He once remarked that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This does not mean that others have no flaws, of course they do, but it does mean that the intensity of our response, the disproportion of our anger, or obsession, is more often about our own shadow than about the reality of the other. Modern psychology has confirmed the depth of this insight. Studies of projection show that people routinely misperceive traits in others that they deny in themselves. Cognitive biases reinforce this. The mind resists owning painful truths, and finds it easier to locate them elsewhere. Even in everyday life we see it. The man who constantly accuses others of lying is often the one who bends the truth most easily. The friend who cannot stop talking about how selfish everyone else is may in fact be blind to her own self-centeredness. The colleague who despises arrogance may secretly crave recognition, and be unable to admit it. To Jung, these were not accidents, but revelations, each one a flare signaling the presence of disowned material in the psyche. What makes projection so insidious is that it feels real. When you look at someone, and feel an instant dislike, it does not feel like your own shadow staring back. It feels like their flaw, their arrogance, their coldness. This is why projection is such a trap. It disguises itself as truth. But for Jung, the key was to cultivate enough self-awareness to pause, and ask, why this reaction? Why does this quality in the other stir me so intensely? Often, the answer is not about the other person at all. It is about you. And so Jung's first test of character emerges. Do you know your projections? Do you see when your anger, disgust, or admiration is really a mirror of your own disowned traits? Or are you blind to this, forever convinced that the flaws belong only to others? To the degree that a person recognizes their projections, and withdraws them, they move closer to authenticity. To the degree that they remain unconscious of them, they live in illusion, never knowing that the story they tell about others is really the story of themselves. This is why Jung placed such weight on the practice of self-reflection. He believed that becoming conscious of projections was a moral task, a way of taking responsibility for the parts of oneself that had been denied. Without this, people become dangerous because they act out their shadows in the world, condemning others, starting conflicts, or creating scapegoats to carry what they cannot bear. Entire societies, Jung warned, can fall into collective projection, demonizing an enemy group, or elevating a leader into a messiah figure. In such cases, what is at stake is not only personal character, but the fate of communities and nations. So, in the second layer of Jung's revelation, we see that character is not just about how one behaves under pressure, but also about what one casts onto the world. Every judgment, every irritation, every exaggerated response tells a story. The question is whether we are willing to read it, whether we have the courage to say, this hatred, this obsession, this idealization, what does it reveal about me? The answer to that question, more than any polished mask or heroic deed, is where true character lies. Jung's third way of uncovering character may be the most profound, and the most unsettling, because it has nothing to do with words at all. It is about what people do with power, not the grand, obvious power of kings, or politicians, but the subtle, everyday opportunities for control, influence, or dominance. To Jung, how a person treats others when they hold even a small advantage is like a magnifying glass on their soul. He observed that in the clinic, in families, in workplaces, people reveal their true character not when they are oppressed, but when they are in a position to oppress. A person's shadow becomes most visible when they are the one in control of resources, knowledge, or authority. Consider the case of a teacher who has authority over children. To outsiders she may appear kind and dedicated, always speaking warmly of her students, but in the classroom, where she knows no one is watching, she belittles the weaker children, mocking their mistakes, and withholding encouragement. Her character is not defined by the polished smile she shows at parent-teacher conferences, but by the quiet cruelty she enacts when she holds power. Jung insisted that such moments when the strong deal with the weak are decisive in revealing who a person truly is. The world sees only the mask. Power strips the mask away. Power does not have to be official, or institutional. It can be as subtle as the advantage one has in a friendship, or a romantic relationship. A partner who knows the other's vulnerabilities may choose to soothe, or to exploit them. A friend who holds a secret may choose to protect, or to weaponize it. In each case, the way the advantage is handled reflects the deepest strata of character. To Jung, this was more reliable than any test, any confession, any speech. Words can deceive, intentions can be disguised, but how someone behaves when they have the upper hand rarely lies. Jung also observed that people reveal themselves by how they treat those from whom they expect nothing. The way someone addresses a waiter, a janitor, or a stranger on the street, these fleeting interactions disclose more about character than hours of self-description. A person who flatters their boss, but humiliates a server has revealed the architecture of their psyche. Respect is not their value, status is. This is why Jung paid close attention to the small, unnoticed gestures of everyday life. They are the fingerprints of the soul. In modern psychology we can see this principle at work in the concept of everyday sadism. Studies show that given a small amount of power, say the chance to administer unpleasant noise to another person, some individuals will eagerly embrace cruelty, even when no benefit is gained. The implication is stark. Cruelty is not only expressed under duress. It often lies dormant, waiting for the right conditions of power imbalance to surface. Jung would say this is the shadow at work, the unintegrated part of the psyche seizing its chance to express itself. Yet just as cruelty is revealed in these situations, so too is compassion. The same small opportunities for dominance are also opportunities for care. The nurse who goes beyond her duty to comfort a frightened patient, the manager who shields an employee from unnecessary blame, the friend who quietly shares credit rather than hoard it, these are not just nice gestures for Jung. They are the deepest revelations of character. They show that the shadow has been integrated, that the person has not allowed unconscious drives for power to dominate their choices. This is why Jung often insisted that the way to know a person is not to listen to their ideals, but to watch their behavior in the realm of the ordinary. He distrusted lofty declarations of values. People may speak eloquently of justice, compassion, or integrity, but the truth of their character emerges when no one is applauding, when they are alone with a vulnerable other, when no one will ever know what they chose to do. In those secret moments, character is naked. Jung's reflections resonate with a warning that echoes across time: beware of those who are charming in public, but harsh in private. This duplicity is not a minor flaw, it is a window into the split between persona and shadow. The persona, the mask we present to the world, is designed to win approval. The shadow, however, erupts where there is no need for pretense. To see the shadow, clearly watch what happens when power is unobserved. There is also a collective dimension to this principle. Whole systems reveal their character by how they treat their most vulnerable members. A society that discards its poor, that exploits its workers, that silences its dissenters, has shown its character more honestly than any national anthem or public celebration could. Jung feared such collective shadows because they showed what happens when unconscious cruelty or indifference is scaled up from individuals to institutions. The result is oppression disguised as order. The antidote, in Jung's view, was not to flee from power, but to integrate it. He believed that each individual has to confront their own shadow-driven hunger for dominance, to recognize it, and to choose consciously how to wield influence. This is not about denying ambition or authority, but about ensuring that, they are aligned with a deeper moral center. When power is exercised consciously, it becomes service. When exercised unconsciously, it becomes exploitation. So we arrive at the third test of character. How do you behave when you hold the advantage? Do you exploit, or protect, dominate, or support, belittle, or uplift? Do you treat those who cannot repay you with dignity, or do you dismiss them as irrelevant? These questions are not philosophical luxuries. They are diagnostic tools for seeing the truth of the human soul. To know someone, Jung taught, is not to be swayed by their charm, or declarations. It is to observe the moments when they think no one is watching, when the power is theirs to use freely. In those quiet choices invisible to most, the essence of their character is revealed. And to know ourselves, we must ask the same question inwardly: what do I do with my small powers? Each day. In the answer lies the truth of who we are. If the first three ways of knowing character through what people project onto others, through their unconscious slips, and through their behavior when holding power sound external, Jung's fourth insight turns inward. It demands that we look at the terrain within ourselves. For Jung, the truest measure of character is not found in the mask we wear for society, nor even in how we wield power, but in the courage we show when facing our own shadow. The shadow, as Jung defined it, is the repository of all we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves: forbidden desires, humiliating weaknesses, impulses we condemn in others, but secretly harbor. It is the inner double we try to suppress, but that always finds expression, often in destructive or unconscious ways. To Jung, a person's character is revealed most clearly by whether they run from the shadow, or dare to confront it. He saw countless patients who tried to build their lives on denial. They projected their darkness outward, condemning others while refusing to look inward. They spoke of integrity, but their relationships fell apart under the weight of dishonesty. They clung to moral superiority, but their anger betrayed unresolved guilt. Jung was merciless in pointing out the cost: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. A person's destiny and their character can be read in how they respond to this confrontation with the shadow. One patient, a respectable businessman, came to Jung plagued by dreams of violent acts. He insisted that he was gentle, incapable of cruelty. But Jung saw the danger in this denial. The man's outward persona of calm concealed a boiling aggression that, unacknowledged, threatened to erupt uncontrollably. The turning point came when the man admitted with horror that he did harbor rage, envy, and fantasies of destruction. Paradoxically, this confession did not make him worse. It made him whole. By owning his shadow, he began to integrate it, to channel his aggression into assertiveness and creative drive rather than sabotage. This, Jung believed, was the hallmark of strong character, not the absence of darkness, but the willingness to confront it honestly. Weakness is not having flaws, weakness is refusing to acknowledge them. Strength is bearing the unbearable truth of who we are, and choosing to work with it. Jung went further. He argued that those who cannot face their shadow are dangerous, because the energy of the repressed does not disappear, it leaks. A person who denies their envy may unconsciously sabotage colleagues. A parent who denies their own greed may burden their child with impossible expectations. A society that denies its collective shadow its history of violence, exploitation, or prejudice may repeat it under new disguises. The refusal to face the shadow is not merely personal cowardice. It is a source of recurring destruction. At the same time, Jung saw immense creative potential in shadow integration. The very traits we hide are intensity, ambition, sexuality, aggression often contain raw vitality. When owned and transformed, they fuel art, innovation, leadership, and depth of love. For Jung, character was not measured by how pure a person appeared, but by how much of themselves they had integrated. A person who integrates their shadow radiates authenticity. They are not perfect, but they are whole. He often contrasted two types of individuals, those who cling to persona, and those who embrace integration. The first type invests everything in their image, whether of goodness, intelligence, or spiritual superiority. But because their shadow is denied, they are brittle, easily shattered when life exposes their hidden flaws. The second type is humbler, but stronger. They do not claim purity, but their acceptance of imperfection makes them resilient. They are less prone to hypocrisy, less enslaved by fear of exposure. In short, they are trustworthy because they are real. To Jung, the process of shadow integration was not optional. It was the central task of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming one's true self. He did not romanticize it. Facing the shadow is often terrifying. Dreams reveal shocking images. Honest reflection uncovers impulses we wish we could disown. But the alternative is worse, to live split, half alive, driven by unseen compulsions. There is no light without shadow, Jung wrote. And no psychic wholeness without imperfection. To run from the shadow is to run from wholeness itself. In practical terms, this means that when assessing character, whether our own or another's, we should look not for perfection, but for integration. How does a person deal with their flaws? Do they acknowledge and work with them, or deny and project them? Do they grow through failure, or hide behind excuses? These are the real markers of depth. A person's honesty with themselves is the ground on which all other traits stand. Without it, charm, kindness, or success are fragile veneers. This also reframes our understanding of morality. Jung rejected simplistic moralizing that divides people into good and bad. Every human carries the capacity for cruelty, selfishness, and betrayal. The difference is not that some are pure and others corrupt, but that some have faced their darkness, while others live in denial. True morality, in Jung's view, comes not from repressing the shadow, but from choosing consciously, with full awareness of one's darker impulses. Perhaps this is why Jung's writings feel so alive today, in an age where image often eclipses substance. Social media encourages the cultivation of persona, the polished mask of happiness, virtue, or success. Yet the shadow seeps out in scandals, in sudden outbursts, in the collective rage that erupts online. Jung would remind us that character is not the highlight reel we show the world. It is the unseen wrestling with our shadow, the daily choice to acknowledge and integrate what we most fear to admit. So the fourth and final test of character in Jung's account is the hardest and most personal. How do you face yourself? Do you deny, repress, and project, or do you turn inward with courage? Do you split, or do you integrate? For Jung, the answer to this question defined not only personal integrity, but the very possibility of living a meaningful life. To evade the shadow is to live half-blind. To face it is to walk the path of wholeness. Having traced Jung's insights into projection, unconscious slips, the test of power, and, finally, the confrontation with the shadow, we arrive at the most practical question: what do we actually do with this knowledge? Jung was never satisfied with psychology as mere theory. For him, insight had to shape how we live, how we relate, and how we build society. To know the true character of another person or of ourselves without learning how to apply that knowledge wisely would be incomplete, even dangerous. This fifth and final part explores how Jung's observations can be lived, how they can be misused, and why he insisted that, in the end, what we see in others is also a mirror reflecting ourselves. Jung believed his discoveries mattered most in intimate human bonds. In love, the failure to understand shadow projection is catastrophic. We fall in love with an image, not the whole person, and when our projections fade, we accuse the partner of changing. A man who denies his own vulnerability may unconsciously seek it in a partner, idealizing her as nurturing, only to turn resentful when she fails to carry his disowned weakness. A woman who represses her own ambition may idolize a man's drive, then hate him for overshadowing her. In both cases, the relationship cracks under the weight of denied parts of the self. To Jung, character in love meant taking responsibility for one's projections, recognizing what belongs to oneself before blaming the other. The strongest couples are not those who never clash, but those who use conflict as a mirror, asking, "What is this revealing about me?" The same applies to work. Jung observed that organizations often reward persona, the mask of competence, and confidence, while punishing the messy honesty of acknowledging flaws. Yet true leadership, in his view, required the courage of integration. A leader who cannot face their own shadow will scapegoat employees, stifle innovation, and foster a culture of fear. By contrast, a leader who accepts their imperfections creates an environment where others can be real, where mistakes become growth rather than shame. Jung's principle thus extends from individual character to institutional health. A company, like a person, reveals its true character in how it handles failure and conflict, not in polished mission statements. Jung also warned against the misuse of his ideas. He knew that once people learn to spot projections and personas, they are tempted to play detective, unmasking others with a sense of superiority. But this turns insight into a weapon. Jung called this the danger of becoming a shadow hunter, someone who sees everyone else's darkness while avoiding their own. Such people wield psychology like a sword, cutting others down in the name of truth while secretly feeding their ego. For Jung, this was not integration, but inflation, being possessed by knowledge rather than humbled by it. True character is shown not in exposing others, but in continually exposing oneself, again and again, to the light of self-awareness. The mirror effect was central here. Jung insisted that what irritates us most in others is usually a reflection of something unresolved in ourselves. The colleague's arrogance may sting because it echoes our denied pride. The neighbor's laziness enrages us because it mirrors our own wish to rest. Even admiration follows this law. When we idolize another's creativity or courage, we are glimpsing dormant potential in ourselves. To Jung, every encounter is a mirror. The question is whether we look into it honestly, or shatter it to preserve our illusions. This makes life both uncomfortable and profoundly meaningful. Each conflict, each attraction, each envy is a clue pointing inward, urging us toward greater wholeness. Jung extended this principle beyond the personal to the collective. He lived through 2 world wars, and saw firsthand how nations, like individuals, project their shadows outward. A society that refuses to face its own violence will demonize others, labeling them as barbaric, while ignoring its own brutality. He watched Europe collapse into fascism, fueled by collective denial and projection. From this he concluded that the fate of civilization depends on the same process as individual character, facing the shadow, integrating it, refusing the easy path of projection. Without this, history repeats in darker and darker forms. Yet Jung was not fatalistic. He believed that the struggle for wholeness in each individual contributes to the healing of the whole. Every act of self-awareness ripples outward. When one person integrates their shadow, they are less likely to scapegoat, less likely to blindly obey destructive leaders, less likely to pass unacknowledged wounds onto their children. For Jung, individuation, the process of becoming whole, was never selfish. It was the highest service to humanity. He wrote, "The better a man knows his own shadow, the less it will fall on his neighbor." In this sense, character is both personal and cosmic. The fate of the world may rest on our willingness to face ourselves. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of Jung's teaching is that this work never ends. To integrate the shadow is not to arrive at some final state of purity. It is a lifelong dance between light and dark, conscious and unconscious, persona and authenticity. We never finish becoming whole. We only deepen into it. Jung likened this to alchemy, the ancient art of transformation, where base metals are slowly refined into gold. Character is forged in the same way, through continuous confrontation with what is hidden, continuous choice to bring it into awareness, continuous integration. In practical life, this means adopting a posture of humility. Instead of asking how can I prove I am good, we ask what in me am I still refusing to see. Instead of rushing to expose others, we use them as mirrors to expose ourselves. Instead of striving to appear flawless, we embrace imperfection as the ground of authenticity. Character, in this view, is not about image or achievement. It is about wholeness. It is about the courage to know oneself fully, to integrate rather than deny, and to live from that integration. As we conclude, the four reveals of character that Jung traced: projection slips, power, and shadow are not simply diagnostic tools for analyzing others. They are invitations to transform ourselves. To see our projections is to glimpse the rejected parts of our soul. To notice our unconscious slips is to witness the mind's hidden truth breaking through. To observe our behavior in power is to learn how we handle responsibility. To face our shadow is to step onto the path of individuation. Each reveal is a mirror showing us who we really are, and who we might become. Jung once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. In a world obsessed with appearances, with polished personas, and curated images, his words cut like a blade. They remind us that character is not built in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not in how we look, but in what we face. The true test of character is not whether we avoid darkness, but whether we dare to integrate it. And in that integration we find not only ourselves, but also our place in the larger story of humanity.